Hey mathematicians, all right, in this lesson we're going to be determining the independent and dependent variables, and then we'll also be looking at the relationship between the variables. Now we're going to start with an example. We would like to identify the independent variable in this situation, your level of engagement in class and your level of understanding. By the end of the lesson, you should be able to find the independent variable of this situation. All right, we're going to start by reviewing a graph. You'll notice that in this graph I have an x-axis and I have a y-axis. One thing to remember is that the x-axis is always the independent variable, always. And the dependent variable is on the y-axis. Now, when you plot a point on the graph, I want you to think about which axis do you move along first. All right, if you said we move along the x-axis first, you're exactly right. And one thing that I want you to notice is that the x-axis is the independent variable. This means that the independent variable always happens first. So let's take a look at what that means in a situation here. We have the independent variable, which is causing or determining what happens to the dependent variable. Now remember that the independent variable happens first. The dependent variable depends on or relies on that independent variable. Without the independent variable, the dependent variable can't do anything. All right, remember this. The independent variable always happens first. So what we're going to do is we're going to find the independent variable by looking at a situation and figuring out what has to happen first before the other variable can happen. So here we go. We've got the number of cars sold and the price of the car. Now what we have is price and number of cars sold. These are the two variables. What I want us to think about is which has to happen first in order for the other one to even matter or exist or happen. And what I want you to think about is the first thing that's going to happen is the independent variable. Now in this situation, if you don't price the car, there are no cars to be sold. There is no number of cars that can be sold. So the price of the car is your independent variable because it has to happen first. Then the number of cars is the dependent variable. The relationship here is the higher the price, the fewer number of cars that are sold. The lower the price, the more number of cars that are sold. All right, here's another example. The number of students in class and the number of desks needed. Now in this situation again, we're going to be trying to find the independent variable first, which is what do you have to have first in order for the other one to even matter or be affected. In this case, you have to have students. If you don't have students, there's no need for desks. So the independent variable is the number of students, making the dependent variable the number of desks needed. And this makes sense if you think about it as the number of desks needed depends on the number of students you have. Now the relationship in this example is the more students you have, the more desks you need. The fewer students you have, the less number of desks needed. All right, let's do another example here. Remember, the independent variable always happens first. All right, the number of cars in a parking lot and the time of day. One variable is the number of cars, the other is the time of day. And think, what has to happen first before the other variable is even important? In this case, if you don't have time of day, you don't have cars. If there's no time of day, there really isn't anything else. So, time of day is the independent variable, and the number of cars is the dependent variable. And that would make sense that the number of cars depends on the time of day. The relationship would be if it's 2 a.m., there probably aren't very many cars in a parking lot. If it's 10 a.m., there's quite a few more cars. All right, the price of a car wash and the number of customers. Again, what do you have to have first before the other variable even matters? If you don't have a price of a car wash, if you don't have the price set, there are no customers. There's nothing that you're selling. So the price of the car wash is the independent variable, and the number of customers is the dependent variable. And this actually makes sense. The number of customers depends on the price of the car wash. If you price the car wash too high, you won't get very many customers. If you price it lower, you'll get more customers. All right, we're going to do more, guys, because the more we practice this, the more permanent it'll make it. All right. Again, remember the independent variable always happens first. The rental charge and the number of days you keep a rented DVD. We've got a rental charge, and we've got number of days. All right. If you think about it, what has to happen first? What needs to actually occur in order for there to be change happening to the other one? And in this case, you have to have rented the movie for some number of days. If you don't rent this movie, there is no rental charge. So the rental charge depends on the number of days you keep a rented DVD. And in this situation here, the more days you keep it, the more the rental charge. The fewer days, the less the charge. All right, price of gasoline and the number of gallons sold. All right, think about it. What has to be happening first in order for change to happen in the other variable? Well, if you don't price gasoline, you're not selling gasoline. So the price of the gasoline is independent. It happens first, and it's what causes the number of gallons sold to actually happen. In this case, the relationship would be the lower the price, the more number of gallons of gasoline sold. The higher the price, the fewer. All right? We've got another set of examples here. The independent variable always happens first. The price of popcorn at a theater, so price, and the number of bags sold. These are our two variables here in this situation. What do you have to have first? If you said, I got to have a price on the popcorn because if I don't put a price on it, I'm not selling popcorn, you're exactly right. And if you think about it, the number of bags sold depends on the price of the popcorn. If the price is too high, you're not going to sell very much. If the price is lower, you're going to sell quite a bit. All right, one last example here before we finish up. Amount of money earned and the number of popcorn bags sold. This is different than the last example. This time we're talking about how much money is actually earned. So, in this situation, what has to happen first, the independent variable, before change can happen to the other variable? Well, in this case, you got to sell popcorn. If you don't sell popcorn, you are not making any money. So, the money earned depends on the number of bags sold. The more bags you sell, the more money you make. All right. I just want to review that in this lesson you were able to determine the independent and then dependent variable, and you were able to look at relationships between the variables. We remember and we know that the independent variable always happens first. It's when you plot points on a graph, it's the x-axis is where we first move, and that is also the x-axis is the independent variable. Now, at the beginning I asked us, let's make sure we can find the independent variable in this situation here. Your level of engagement and your level of understanding. And we're going to use that same idea. What has to happen first before the other one even is like relevant or even is happening? And I will tell you now that if you don't engage yourself, that has to happen first, you will not have a deeper level of understanding. So, your level of understanding depends on your level of engagement. The more engaged you are, the more you'll understand. The less engaged you are, the less you'll understand. So, hopefully this lesson helps quite a bit identifying the independent variable and also dependent variable.